Chapter 1, Dying Isn't Fun. It was a regular autumn night for Alan. After finishing the latest chapter of One Piece he went out for a jog. Purely fictional weebs don't do exercise. There were many things on his mind, like when is the next chapter coming out, or I wonder if eating ramen for dinner is considered healthy. The park was quite empty this time of day. The shopping district was quite far away from his house, and the park was right in between the two. He only started jogging because it took 40 minutes to just walk to the store. This way he got exercise and the groceries at the same time. He lived alone, working as a freelancer and spending most of his free time reading novels and watching anime. He also played games, but the former two took priority over most of his other hobbies. He had very few friends, and he was an orphan. He always felt that he didn't need much of a family. He was happy as he was now. He worked hard, had his own apartment and spent his free time doing what he loved most. While running he failed to notice the clouds getting stirred. Through the music in his headphones and the sound of his own regulated breath, he failed to notice the faint darkness covering the sky. Rain isn't unusual, but anyone paying attention to these clouds would run for cover. Thunderstorms are not a pleasant thing to catch while away from home with little to no cover. The thing that brought his attention to the sky was the strong crackle. It shook the headphones off his head. Looking up he could see the biggest storm brewing in the clouds. He had nowhere to hide. Looking around he realized that he was closer to the shopping district than to his house, so he started sprinting towards it, hoping to find an open store. As he ran, he started to feel the wind speed of the storm. The trees were bending down, bowing to the clouds. What was left of the leaves fell, coating the road in a thick yellowish carpet. It all was going too quickly. There was little time to react as a resounding crackk, one of the bigger trees, couldn't resist any longer. And, as luck would have it, it fell right upon Alan. He tried to jump out of the way, but he was too slow. It knocked him down. The size of the tree was too much for him to handle. So staying there reeling from the impact and screaming while being crushed by the massive tree, he started hearing more and more trees fall. Some fell on top of the bigger tree, applying more and more pressure to his lower body. Many fell around him. It was already a miracle none fell on top of his head. Many thoughts were going through his mind. He was panicking and quickly losing hope. Then he heard a lightning bolt. He didn't know which tree it hit, but he could smell something burning. Slowly, the fire spread on the dried-up branches of the trees, crushing his body. As the fire reached him, the only thing he could do was flail his hands around hoping to escape from it. But fate had other plans. He felt the fire. The trees surrounding him became akin to a bonfire, with him in the middle. It hadn't started raining yet, but it was already too late. Just like that, the fire slowly ate away at him. Screaming and praying didn't help him. Chapter 2, Meeting God. Alan woke up screaming in his mind, but there was no voice to accompany his desire to scream out in terror. Opening his eyes he could see that stars surrounded him. He couldn't see the end of them. The stars seemed to part ways in a direction, as if encouraging him to follow the road they made for him. This looks sketchy. Why am I here? The last thing I remember is pain. I was trapped under those trees. I think I fell unconscious. Looking down revealed that he had no legs or arms. He was a blob of light, formless. Here he couldn't feel any pain. He couldn't feel anything. In fact, he could only float. Without waiting any longer he went in the direction the stars were pointing him. What else could he do? Stay there for eternity? He wanted to see what was happening. He must have walked for what seemed like years. Maybe it was the anticipation? The hope for a new life? Curiosity for what happens in the afterlife? Regardless of what stirred his mind in the beginning, right now he was getting tired, not physically of course, but his mind needed rest. He had time to contemplate many things about himself and his surroundings. He had long since come to terms with his death. Some parts of it he tried to forget. Like the fact that there weren't many people that would notice him missing. By the time his body is found it would be burned beyond recognition. His ID wasn't exactly fireproof either, so he assumed his body wouldn't even be recognized. Sometime during his journey in this endless expanse of stars, he started feeling things around him, perceiving things without gazing at them. As a One Piece fan he recognized the similarities between this and observation hockey. It was obviously not hockey by any stretch of the imagination. but as an otaku, there was no way he would call it anything else. He could reach far away, countless stars were in his perception, each represented a system. A majestic picture of infinite splendor, all for his figurative eyes to enjoy. He could feel the stars surrounding him dwindling in number. Now he could feel a presence in front of him, he had come to the end of his journey. The presence was grand. Compared to the stars that surrounded him, it was too big to be completely covered with by his perception. After a while of standing still, it spoke, communicating through thought. "And why are you here, small one? No mortal soul can survive in this place." It had been a while since he had a conversation. After composing himself, Alan responded in thought. "I do not know, I just exist, maybe to enjoy the sights?" After all, if a being so grand couldn't comprehend his mortality, then how could he? "And who may you be, God perhaps?" he continued quizzically. "In a sense, I am God, creation originated from me. However, I only observe, the only time I interfered was to begin the process of gathering energy to form what you humans called the Big Bang. It took Alan a while to respond to that, but he wasn't really one for religion anyway, so he got over it quickly. "So, what's going to happen to me? What happens after a human dies?" "Usually when one of your kind dies, their memories are wiped and their soul is sent to reincarnate. For some reason, yours just wandered off here. Your soul, however, would retain its memories regardless of what happens next. Can't you send me in a world of my choosing? I've gazed upon many familiar ones on my way here." That's right, on the way here Alan saw many worlds similar to his own, but also many that he had thought were fictional. He guessed that the possibilities of the worlds being the same as in the anime/manga were infinitesimal, however, in an infinite number of stars some were bound to be just as depicted. God pondered for a while. Then he suddenly spoke. "This is the first time I've ever interacted with my creation. I will help you this time. After all, you are a curiosity, neither of us can explain your existence. I can send you to a world of your choosing. This is the first time something like this happened. Your soul is much too strong for an infant to carry. I could, however, transmigrate you into an already grown body. I figure a human the age of 10 would work." "Very well, choose the world and timeline you desire." After that Alan stood for a while. He decided against choosing one piece. That world was as beautiful as it was dangerous. A long-time fan of the show like him would know. Alan made up his mind eventually, choosing the world of My Hero Academia, 6 years before Midoriya got into UA. He chose this world because he wanted a somewhat peaceful life. Adding to that was the fact that he found it to be interesting. He also wanted some excitement in his new life. God instantly found it. After all, you could assume his perception spreads everywhere in this place. It was the reason you were guided here. "I see that the world you have chosen is somewhat reliant upon power. I will grant you one. Choose wisely." Alan instantly decided upon the Pika Pika no Mi. He found it to be one of the strongest powers in One Piece. He also found Kizaru's personality to be similar to his own, both always stuck to doing the bare minimum if they could. "I can grant you that power. I will integrate it into that world, just for you. Enjoy your time alive. Until we meet again, I will be observing you." And just like that, it all went dark. Chapter 3, New Beginning. I woke up in an alleyway in the middle of the night, and instantly my mind was filled with the memories of a 10-year-old quirkless orphan also named Alan. His parents were here on a road trip and they tragically died in a car accident when the kid was 5. In the memories of the old Alan, there were only his parents. And no one from his immediate family ever reached out to him, so I could only assume he didn't have any. That worked out for me. Getting attached to someone would be quite hard. After all, this body may be young but my soul was certainly not. Even before wandering endlessly between stars I was already 27. As for why I was in an alleyway, old Alan was left here to die after being stabbed by a random villain. The villain was probably just a random psycho. I should at least strive to avenge this body's former host. Thankfully I remember his face in detail. As panicked as the child was during those moments I can analyze the memories easily. As for why a child would be wandering the streets this late, in short, He was a victim of bullying. The kids at the orphanage managed to lock him out for the night by locking the main gate. The wall was too big for a child to climb. The old lady managing it probably didn't notice. It wasn't unusual. Making sure every child was in his place is the job of our group's supervisor, who is also a bully. The old Alan wasn't strong-willed, as he was just a child. While other children can be cruel, at least the old lady at the orphanage was kind, but she couldn't do much to stop the bullying, even if she noticed it. But that's enough looking into the past for now. As I started getting up, I spread my observation hockey as far as I could around me, which was about 20 meters. I was being limited by my body. However, even this much was a lot, considering the fact that I was still 10 years old. I didn't need to worry about running out of willpower while using it. My soul could spread its perception extremely far away, taking in countless amounts of information at a time. Now 20 meters was my limit. The next thing I tried doing was turning into light. The concept of using powers didn't come naturally to me. After all, I come from a world where such things can only appear in fiction. But surprisingly, all I needed to do was to will my body to turn into light. As I stared at it, my clenched fist turns into a yellow glow. As I moved my hand, my eyes could barely keep up with it. For some reason, the light wasn't blinding me, it was calming really. After experimenting for a while, turning different body parts into light and moving at high speeds, I banged my head on a few walls. Obviously, I managed to get accustomed to my speed. Just like Kizaru, the Pika Pika no Mi was too strong for my brain to follow, which wasn't used to moving at such speeds. The speed and surplus of information were hard to keep up with. It was here that I realized one of the problems with this power. God had said he would integrate the power in this world, which meant that he turned the devil fruit into a quirk, which could be copied and or stolen by other quirks. So I needed to be cautious against those types of quirks. On another note, the quirk worked exactly as a Logia devil fruit would. While banging my head on walls earlier, I didn't get injured at all. Meaning I don't need to worry about any conventional methods of attack, besides quirk suppressing bullets. Leaving the alleyway, I started heading towards my temporary home, the orphanage. I doubt I would be able to find my killer anytime soon. I will familiarize myself with my own power before hunting him down. As I reached the orphanage, I simply turn into light and go into a straight line above the brick wall, then right towards the ground. My landing kicked up a bit of dust. Thankfully I wasn't injured at all, props of having a Logia as a quirk. The door to the dorms was always unlocked. Going towards my dorm room quietly and slipping into bed wasn't hard. Observation hockey helped a bit. Using it navigating in the dark was simple. As I reached my bed, I slip into dreamland, my mind being just as tired as my little body. Chapter 4, Training and Quirk. Underscore time skip 1 year underscore. A year has passed since I came in this world. The first thing I did was going to the doctor and registering my quirk. I didn't really show all of its power. I may have left the fact that I couldn't really be damaged out of my official file. I also didn't mention that I could move at almost light speed. The name of the quirk was Light because I was feeling lazy that day, and it's described as an emitter quirk that allows me to release light from different parts of my body. Although it raised some queries, after a few questions, my case was simply classified as a rare late awakening. It was just a clean-cut case, so they didn't look further into it. One thing I failed to realize when waking up was that I was really tall for a 10-year-old. I was around 1.7 meters. That was probably one of the reasons for my bullying. It was unusual after all. I was tall and skinny. It was to be expected really. You can assume the old Alan wasn't really into weight training as a child, which left me looking like a small, skinnier version of Slender Man, with appropriately sized hands. I have been training my power and body for a while now. I started training to strengthen my body a few weeks after coming here, after realizing that having a weak body somewhat limited both my hockey and quirk. My stamina isn't endless. I can't use my powers too much without getting exhausted. In the beginning, just turning parts of my body into light felt tiring. Now I can do so easily. Creating strong explosions is still hard. I can only create small ones. Even those can get tiring after a dozen or so beams. I just did a simple exercise routine. Mainly because I was never into exercise to begin with, I just did the standard, running, push-ups, squats, and so on. This helped me get a bit bulkier, not much, still an 11-year-old after all. Being an orphan means I didn't have access to any gym equipment, therefore, I couldn't do much weight training besides lifting garbage at the Dagoba Municipal Beach Park. I didn't attempt to clean it up, that isn't my job. As I get more accustomed to my body, my haki slowly expands. I am now able to cover around 100 meters at all times. I use it subconsciously, it has become the norm, since I never run out of willpower due to my strengthened soul. After finishing my workout at the beach, it was already dark. As I walk to the orphanage, I can't help but think of the bullies I met when I first came to this world. I just scared them a bit, and now they don't come anywhere near me. I'm still an adult after all, can't go beating kids around. I just sent a small beam near them. I still couldn't cause huge explosions like Kizaru, I'm still working on that. The small beam still kicked up some dust and scared them away. As I was reaching the street corner, I heard a scream from a nearby alleyway. Oh well, it was bound to happen at some point. It was still the MHA world, villains were common here. And walking around during the night is just asking for trouble. As I walked into the narrow alleyway, I could see a salaryman on the ground struggling while a four-armed villain was on top of him punching away. The villain clearly intending to continue until the victim stopped moving completely. Now, I couldn't really ignore this. If a murder happened on my route, police will start patrolling the area more frequently. That would make my quirk training difficult. I simply raised my finger in the villain's direction and fired a beam of concentrated light into his back. It caused a small explosion, knocking him off his victim instantly. I was about to fire another one, but the man was already out cold apparently. The salaryman was dazed and confused, he couldn't really see my face, so I just turned into a beam of light and escaped in between the buildings. Going above would attract more attention to this place. I didn't want to get arrested for using my quirk, but I still called the police at a nearby payphone and gave them the location of the villain. They would just pin this on a vigilante. It still brought less attention than murder. I really didn't feel like sticking around, so I went to my dorm room and slipped into dreamland. Chapter 5, Vigilante. The next morning, as I watched the news, I could see the salaryman from last night getting interviewed at the hospital. He tried to describe me as best as he could, but it was too dark, so he couldn't give any facial features. The police called my actions dangerous and reckless. They took this as an isolated case and started building a file for vigilantism. As I was sitting on the couch in the free area of the orphanage, I closed the TV and prepared to go out and train. Being considered a vigilante didn't bother me. I don't think they can get any information on me from last night's encounter. Going towards the park, I started jogging. You would think that after my past lives experience with parks I wouldn't set foot in one ever again, but I didn't have anywhere else to go. I could use the cover of some trees to practice my quirk, and I used the metal bars in the playground for pull-ups. After that I went to the beach to practice my light beams into the ocean. It was less destructive this way. I've been trying to replicate Yasukani no Magatama, an attack Kizaru used, crossing my arms in front of me and using both hands to fire a torrent of deadly light particles. I couldn't do it as well as him, obviously. I needed to get more proficient in using the devil fruit. Using my weak version of it already left me gasping for air. Other moves I tried to replicate are Alma no Murakumo. I couldn't solidify my light enough to turn it into a sharp blade. I could at most make it into a pointed stick. And Amaterasu, blinding my enemies with a beam of light. I needed to work on my aim for that one. Observation haki helped a lot. The only ability I can replicate without falling to my knees and gasping for air is Yada no Kagami, sending a beam of light forward, reflecting it off of surfaces, and then transforming into the light to get to where I want. The movement looked almost instant. Finishing my quirk training, I use Yada no Kagami to climb up a building and start running, from building to building, practicing parkour and observing the alleyways below me. After a while I smelled something burning. Looking around, I managed to catch smoke rising from an apartment building nearby. Without thinking much, I dashed in that direction, reaching the building opposite to the one on fire. Looking down, I could see people panicking and calling authorities to deal with the fire. I quickly decided to check the building using my haki. Having died in a fire before, I didn't want others to go through that. I could feel a person trapped in a bathroom inside an apartment. Using Yada no Kagami, I dashed into the building, navigating the beam of light to reach the bathroom door using my haki. The inside was filled with smoke. I quickly ripped the sleeves of my tracksuit, using one to cover my mouth and nose, and preparing one for the person inside. Opening the door, I could see a small girl. Her eyes are large and round, their iris is a warm brown, her hair is shoulder length and about the same color as her eyes, bobbed and curved inwards at the ends. This was, if I remember correctly, Ochiko Uraraka, a much younger version of her anyway. I couldn't really sit there for long. I could sense her fear even through the thick smoke filling the room. I quickly used the sleeve to cover her face and dashed out of the house through a window. I couldn't use Yada no Kagami, so I grasped the side of the building. Using Ama no Murakumo, I dug into the building. Although I couldn't sharpen it, I could still use it as a pointed stick, piercing it into the building and letting it kill most of my momentum. When reaching the ground, I gently placed Ochiko down. I could see her parents in the distance, with bags in hand. They were most likely out buying groceries when this was happening. When they saw the fire, they quickly dropped all their bags and dashed towards their daughter. I quickly turned into a beam of light and ran off. Although getting to know a part of the main cast seemed nice, sticking around would be troublesome. As I reached a dumpster, I quickly threw away my ripped tracksuit and got rid of my makeshift face mask. Heading home, I was somewhat tired and extremely on edge, hoping I won't get recognized. POV narration _______________________________________________________________________________________________________ The only thing the people that ran out of the apartments could see was smoke. Most people were panicking, calling ambulances and firefighters. All of them were hoping for a hero to appear. Their prayers were answered when the most appropriate hero for this situation turned up almost instantly. Backdraft was most likely already in the area. He quickly started putting out the spreading fires. He caught with the corner of his eye a flash of light, a beam heading into the building. It disappeared in a second. No one else seemed to have noticed it. Then he heard a window break. He saw a young man holding an even younger girl, jumping through a window. He prepared to attempt to catch them on a stream of water, hoping he could soften their fall. Thankfully there was no need, as the young man materialized what seemed to be a sort of pure light and slowed down his own descent by thrusting it into the building. Backdraft quickly concentrated on the fires, hoping to suppress them. After a while, he managed to do so. But the young man was gone. The girl was in the hands of what he presumed were her parents, crying and coughing. He wanted to thank the young man. What he did couldn't really be considered illegal, just reckless. The most that could happen was a fine and a few days of voluntary work. He hoped the police wouldn't be too hard on the young man when they caught him. Chapter 6: Cleaning up the trash. It has been 2 months since that incident. The police couldn't identify me, but they managed to link this case to the one of the salaryman. A profile started to slowly appear for them. A young man with a quirk that allowed him to move at great speeds and control light. That didn't make me feel threatened. They are looking for a man. They can't possibly know I'm just a really tall 11-year-old child. After a few weeks, their investigation still went nowhere. Meanwhile, I kept training, only using my quirk when no one could see me. Hiding like this is really hard, especially since in these modern times surveillance cameras are quite common. Slipping into the backstreets unseen is hard, but they provide good training for my observation haki, so I can't complain. After training my quirk for a while, I finally managed to get the hang of it. I couldn't hit anything at the speed of light. Unlike Kizaru, I wasn't an absolute beast when it came to physical power. If I attempted to do so, I would hurt myself more than my enemy. Thankfully devil fruits are easy to control with enough practice, and I don't need a short grandpa to tell me how to use my power. Currently, the strongest kick I could deliver was enough to snap a tree in half, but it hurt a lot. When I tested my limits, I did so by slowly ramping up the speed of the kick until I almost broke my leg on a tree. My limits would change the stronger I became, so I wasn't too worried about it. I also needed to concentrate so my kick would be solid. In the past few weeks, I also took to another hobby. It led me to carry some more practical tools on me, like a rope. In front of me was a masked man hanging upside down from a fire escape ladder. he just attempted to mug another civilian. I tied him upside down after knocking him out with a kick to the temple. I didn't really care much for the safety of villains. I detest them, always acting without any regard for their fellow humans. Some may have excuses, but many are just scum. Like the one in front of me. The least they can do is provide me with battle experience. Even then I need to completely turn off my hockey while fighting them, otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do anything. To hide my face I just use a pair of gold amber tinted sunglasses and a fake stubble. For my costume I just wore a yellow suit and white shoes. Obviously taking inspiration from Kizaru himself. The police picked up on my activity. They gave me the nickname Yellow Flash for obvious reasons. At least they didn't call me Kizaru, it means yellow monkey. I only operate at night, I use my time wisely, I never waste more than 2 hours on hunting down villains, I still need rest, my body is still growing. Anyway, after checking for cameras with hockey I use Yada no Kagami to reach a payphone and tell the police of the subdued villain's location. My nights usually end here. But as I was going towards the orphanage I noticed a distinct smell of iron, it was most definitely blood. I turned my hockey to the maximum, to see a man getting stabbed in the middle of the street. Without waiting I turned into a beam of light, reflecting my way behind the aggressor and used the blunt Ama no Murakumo to deliver a fast strike to his side. Sending the villain crashing through a wall. The villain was most likely severely injured just now, but I didn't have time to be concerned about him. I quickly searched the victim for a phone and called an ambulance and the police. After doing that I took a glance at the obviously deranged villain. He didn't bother to wear anything to cover his face. He looked familiar, so I stepped closer to him. I now recognized him as the one that murdered the old Alan. I decided to make sure he would get apprehended. I wasn't going to kill him, that wasn't a good way to deliver justice. With my hockey I felt him twitch. Apparently he wasn't injured enough. When I was a few steps away from him, with my hands in my pockets, he pounced towards me. I look at him with disdain. Did he take me for an idiot? Laughing maniacally, he tried to stab me in my chest. I didn't bother reacting to him. He had a look of crazed elation when he saw his knife about to go through my chest. That look quickly changed into confusion when he couldn't feel much resistance as the knife went in my chest. I simply raised my leg and crushed his head down with my heel. I used the appropriate force of all of my strength to knock him out. The man clearly had some sort of strength/endurance enhancement quirk. He was undoubtedly injured earlier, but a normal man would have been put in the hospital. After making sure the villain wouldn't be getting up, I heard sirens and booked it. I definitely didn't want to deal with the police. Unbeknownst to me, a camera caught the whole exchange. Chapter 7, Business as Usual. As I reached home my hand started hurting more and more. I used a lot of force when hitting that villain with Ama no Murakumo. My grip strength was tested to its limits. I didn't realize at that time due to adrenaline. Thankfully it wasn't anything serious. However, I most likely busted some of his organs with it. I'm quite sure that the only reason he could keep moving was because of adrenaline and insanity. I changed out of my suit and put it in a bag I had hidden in an alleyway near the orphanage. I reached the common area. I turned on the TV. I didn't feel like sleeping and I wanted to see the news. On the news I could already see the title, Murder Stopped by a Local Vigilante. What I didn't expect however was to see footage of the fight. I had been careless. In my rush to save that man's life I failed to check my surroundings. Dread and regret slowly started filling me. I had been too careless. My face was in plain view. Although covered by my glasses and fake beard it would still be obvious to anyone who knew me. The camera was at an angle. It didn't manage to catch the knife going through me. At least some of my abilities still remained unknown. Thankfully I didn't have any friends. The only person that knows my face well enough to make the connection is the old lady, but she didn't really watch the news. Regardless of that, I needed to find a new place to live as soon as I could. I started calming down. I needed rest after such a long day. I didn't want to ruin my schedule. After sleeping the night through I woke up and got dressed for my workout. I picked up my bag and went straight to the beach. I always keep my vigilante costume with me. Soon something I dislike will start. The summer holiday was almost over. Soon enough I will have to go to school. It seemed like time wasted to me, but I couldn't ignore it. I still wanted to get an education and integrate into society. I had thought of becoming a hero, but I am undecided. I still have time to decide my future. I don't like to rush things. I haven't been enjoying myself a lot lately, always training and beating villains. I should put some time aside to play some games and read manga. The past year I needed to get accustomed to my new power, now I can relax a bit. Although I said that, I will still make my training harder. I need to reach a point that I am satisfied with. I wanted to be in peak physical condition. POV narration The chief of police Kenji Tsurugami was sitting at his desk looking at the reports about the recent vigilante that sprung up in Muzitafu. He was concerned that his recent spike in popularity might encourage others to do more reckless actions. From the camera footage, he had seen the vigilante Yellow Flash lived up to his name. He had thought the villains were just exaggerating when recounting their experience with him. Although he couldn't understand why the villain didn't move out of the way for that attack. He assumed he was wearing a protective vest underneath his suit. There was no other blood at the scene beside the victims and the villains. However now, with the surfacing of this short but somewhat eventful battle, all doubt was thrown out the window, his blinding speed displayed for the world to see. The Yellow Flash was quickly rising in popularity in the eyes of the general public and notoriety in the eyes of the heroes and police force. He needed to do something about this, before it was too late. He decided to call one of his younger detectives, Naomasa Tsukachi. He wanted to give him a chance to prove himself. After all, he was quite new to the police force in this area. Naomasa, I have something for you to look into. He immediately stated, not wanting to waste any more time than necessary. Yes, sir. Naomasa stated firmly, I trust you have been watching the news lately. I want you to find the identity of the vigilante titled Yellow Flash. The chief waited for a moment, then continued. I will have the appropriate documents sent to you. You are to look for any similarities in quirk and appearance in our databases. What should I do after finding it, sir? Naomasa was quite confident in his skill. He knew that, as long as the man was registered, it was just a matter of time before he was found. His quirk was quite unique after all. When you discover his identity, you will just give me a report. He paused, thinking a bit. After that, he ended the phone call and called someone to give Naomasa the required information to start his investigation. I will need to contact some heroes to apprehend him. He said to himself. While he trusted the capabilities of his subordinates, he knew that catching this person was going to be tricky, even for most pro-heroes. And so he sat there contemplating the best team for detaining such vigilante. Chapter 8, Daytime Light Show. Time skip 2 years Last month I became 13 years old, and I couldn't help but think that my body's physiology was somehow affected by my devil fruit. I was unnaturally strong for a person without a strength-enhancing quirk. I was already 2.1 meters tall, towering over most grown adults. During this time I gained more muscle. It wasn't noticeable due to my recent growth sprouts, but I was by no means skinny. My training progressed a lot. It went from barely being able to do 10 push-ups in the beginning, to not even feeling 500. Nowadays I need to add weights to my body to feel any stress from the workout. Weights in the form of heavy trash from the beach. My height made me a lot more recognizable. It made me completely avoid populated areas in my civilian time. The only place I couldn't hide was at school. I stood out like a sore thumb. The one good thing that came out of school was that I got to see both Midoriya and Bakugo. Granted we were in different classes, but we still interacted. We all went to Aldera Junior High, so we usually met in the courtyard. With Bakugo, it's always something like, so what if you're tall? You're still just an extra. He usually tried to fight me. I just put both my fingers over to his eyes and use a weakened version of Amaterasu. I didn't want to blind him after all. I also never stick around for long, so by the time he recovers I'm usually long gone. With Midoriya, it was usually just him muttering a hello. He isn't very sociable. I sometimes help him when he's getting bullied. After so many encounters with me, Bakugo knows that I can be annoying, so he just leaves with his crew when I get involved. The only time he tried to genuinely fight me, I was just dodging and using Amaterasu. My vigilante work didn't stop. I was extra careful so there weren't any more mistakes like last time. I had basically turned my part of the city into a crime-free zone, well mostly. Some still acted regardless of my fame and notoriety. An excellent example of that were the daytime robbers in front of me. It was quite a sizable group, a band of 13 thugs, however only about 4 looked even somewhat experienced, the rest must have been recruited off the streets. I was observing them from a nearby rooftop. About 7 of them used guns, the others probably have offensive quirks. 5 people were holding the hostages together. They picked 10 people that seemed to have the most harmless quirks. I heard sirens blaring. Quickly police cars surrounded the place. One policeman with his megaphone started initiating negotiation with the robbers. One of the robbers seemed to have a voice amplification quirk. They went back and forth for a while. I was waiting for a good time to assist. Meanwhile, a few heroes started appearing. The only ones I recognized were Death Arms and the somewhat new pro-hero Kamui Woods. They seemed to also be waiting for an opportunity, obviously concerned for the hostages. The police brought their escape vehicles. They had asked for 4 vans. The police had little choice but to give in. Then I heard them saying the magic words. "We will come out now, make way." As I heard that I got prepared. When all of them came out I realized that they decided to take some hostages with them. It mattered little to me. I jumped up floating above them, crossed my hands and used Yasakani no Magatama. I was not worried about hitting the hostages. With my observation haki I could only miss if I wanted to. As the light flashed out of my hands, rays started raining down upon the villains. They couldn't even react before being pierced by them. I was aiming to incapacitate them, not kill. And just like that, I used Yada no Kagami to quickly escape the scene. It was crawling with law enforcement and heroes. Thankfully I was too fast for them to catch. They didn't have anyone in their group that could counter me. I quickly reached a back street and went in between the buildings, paths I knew too well, lacking in surveillance and activity. I quickly got changed and went on my way. POV Kamui Woods Being a new hero during a hostage situation is stressful. As I stood there and waited for the negotiation to end and the hostages to come out I couldn't help but grimace. We didn't have any other quirk that could subdue them quickly, besides mine. My quirk arbor should hopefully be enough. I just need to catch them when they are distracted. Negotiations went as planned. All of the villains were coming out. Even though they were still holding hostages, that was to be expected. When all of them came out I was preparing to use lacquered chain prison, but the instant the last one came outside a yellow light flashed above us. Most people looked up. The only thing they could see was the light. It was like staring at the sun. Rays of deadly lasers started raining down on the villains. I was instantly worried about the safety of the hostages. After a few seconds the assault ended. All of the villains were falling to the ground, but the hostages were still standing. Looking up, I could only catch a glimpse of a yellow costume. The police quickly acted and took the hostages away from the vicinity of the injured robbers. I heard the police talking about a vigilante in the past. It's the first time I've seen him work. Regardless of the legality of his activity, his ability was very impressive. After all, he already has more experience under his belt than me. Unfortunately, the police force and even most pro-heroes didn't share his view. They considered him a danger to others and himself. The news certainly didn't care how they painted this situation. It seems they only want the most interesting headline, not caring about lawful and societal norms. As such, the headlines next morning were yellow flash strikes again, and as heroes and police stood aside, the vigilante saved the day. Only a few reporters that were closer to the police force said anything positive about us. The rest just wanted to spring up controversy. This didn't bode well for anybody. It made the police and the heroes at the scene look incompetent, and at the same time, it made them hold animosity towards the vigilante. even if it wasn't his fault at all. I can only hope he doesn't get caught at this point. Chapter 9, Fighting Someone Strong. Lately, I started hating the media more and more. Most were under the thumb of All for One, otherwise, I can't comprehend why they would paint heroes in that image. The incident with the robbery from a week ago was just one of many. Stirring up controversy was a reason, sure, but they intentionally portrayed the heroes and police as incompetent. Almost as if they were trying to make the public lose hope in them. Too bad, most of the public considered me a hero. In their eyes my name was associated with theirs. Now I am running towards a commotion. I heard screams while walking to my usual training spot, so I quickly got into costume. When I reached the scene I could see a hero team trying to fight against a big, bulky villain. I immediately recognized the guy as muscular. The ones fighting him were a man and a woman with water-related quirks. I can only assume they are the water hose duo. I remember them being dead in the anime, can't remember much about circumstances, but I'm pretty sure Muscular killed them. Before jumping in I quickly hit every camera nearby with a beam of light. The police already knew how I looked in costume, it was more of a formality really. I could see that the hero duo was already exhausted, they did their best. They held this hulking madman long enough for civilians to evacuate. Without wasting any more time I flashed to Muscular's side, using my heel to kick him through a building. He probably reached an alleyway behind it, but he was definitely coming back. He was as angered as he was hurt. He came out of the rubble screaming profanities and dashing at me. As he reached me his punch was already speeding towards me, muscles growing 3 times in size, making his arm look like a massive muscle balloon. As he punched towards my torso, I jump up, stepping on his hand and formed a blunt Ama no Murakumo in my hand which I used to whack him over the head with. There was no reason to hold back. Leaving him dazed and reeling, I used him as a platform and jumped back, kicking a ray of light towards him, which was threatening to pierce his stomach. He quickly used both his arms to try and block the attack. It was probably out of reflex, his eyes could barely follow it. The beam went through his arms and exploded in front of his stomach, sending him hurtling backwards. As he stood there curled up on his knees, clutching his stomach, I slowly approached him with my hands in my pockets. When I reached him looking down, I stepped on his head, bringing it to the ground. "I'll fucking kill you." He started screaming from under my shoe. "You villains sure are scary," I said with a sarcastic smile. "Honestly, Muscular, I was expecting a lot more from you. I guess you shouldn't expect anything from a raving madman." I could feel his anger, it was boiling. He seemed to be trying to get up. Sighing, I put more strength into my leg, crushing his head into the pavement. I stood there for a while, looking down to make sure he was out of the fight. Then a stream of water came towards me from my side. Looking at it, it seemed to be coming in slow motion. I simply stepped to my left and dodged it. Looking at the hero duo, they seemed strangely determined. "Stop, Yellow Flash. You need to come with us to the station. It's still not too late for the police to forgive your crimes," Koda's father said, hoping to convince me to surrender myself. In a sense he wasn't wrong. Unlike other vigilantes, I never killed any villain, none even died from the injuries I've caused. Muscular was only unconscious, he was hurt, but his injuries weren't life-threatening at all. The holes in his hands were cauterized as the light went through. He was unlikely to die even if left alone. On the sidelines, I could see civilians and reporters taking pictures and filming the situation. "I should take my leave now, take care, water hose." I left after saying that. Heroes were people that I could respect, they upheld justice. In his first life, he had seen people compare Muscular with All Might, and while his strength was decent his actual combat power was more than lacking. Overall, he felt that the only villain that could pose a threat to him was All for One himself. Right now, both he and All Might should still be recovering from their bout. The latter appearing less and less in the public eye. I need to get in touch with some people, POV narration The recent incident with the Yellow Flash and Muscular revealed quite a few things to Naomasa. He realized that the yellow flash was completely peaceful when it came to heroes. It was somewhat reassuring. Many vigilantes tended to fight back when a hero attempted to arrest them. This one just left, going as far as to wish them well. Another thing that he noticed was that their local vigilante seemed taller. In the past he seemed to be of average height. The few villains that could catch a glimpse of him had reported him being taller than in his only video depiction at the time. He didn't take their claims seriously at first. Even after testing them with his quirk, he thought that they were most likely just dazed when they saw him. Now he knew that they were speaking the truth. He needed to look deeper into this. This case had eluded him for a long time, leaving a stain in his otherwise perfect career. The chief of police didn't hold it against him. He realized there was not much evidence to begin with. There were no adults or teenagers registered that had a similar quirk to the vigilante. The trail that had gone cold now sprung back to life. The new sighting gave him a strange feeling, almost as if the person wanted to be seen. It leads him to believe that the vigilante was hiding something. With his speed he could have gone out of there without being spotted by any civilian, let alone the press. Maybe he destroyed the cameras nearby for a reason? Was he trying to make it seem like he was covering his tracks? That sounded unlikely to the detective, but there was no way for him to know. Chapter 10, The show is starting. Underscore 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 time skip 2 years underscore 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 underscore. It has been 2 years since my fight with Muscular. My daily life progressed, as usual. I thankfully stopped growing any taller. It was about time anyway. I was already as tall as All Might in his muscle form. Standing at 2.2 meters was already a lot. My physical strength thankfully grew along with my body. Constant training brought my body to its peak, at least the peak he could achieve without any advanced equipment. There wasn't much I could do. Even lifting a car and using it as a training weight didn't do it anymore. When I started training, I wanted to become as strong as Kizaru, failing to realize just how long it would take, what it would require. My quirk definitely affected physical strength, otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten this strong in such a short span of time. I had realized in the past that my progress would be blocked at some point. I had just hoped it would come later in life. Now I was 15, I believed that the plot was about to start. It was just a matter of time. I wasn't going to interfere. I didn't need to save Bakugo, as I already knew he would be fine. Today I added something new to my vigilante costume. It was a marine coat with shiny shoulder pads. It had the word Justice boldly written on the back. I was wearing it as a cape. I wanted to add this for a long time. The reason I couldn't was that I had to save a lot of money and find someone that would create a custom-made outfit for an anonymous buyer. Now I stood around and watched a giant villain wrecking some buildings. Remembering this scene, I realized this was the Hero Mountain Lady's debut, where she stole Kamui's spotlight. If that was true, then Midoriya was somewhere behind the crowds of people observing the situation. I guess I'll put on a little show. As I could see Mount Lady charging and about to grow in size, I jump on the villain's head and put my fingers towards his eyes. Using Amaterasu at full force, leaving the villain blinded, as he was clutching his eyes, I jumped away just as Mount Lady drop-kicked him. I could already see some wood extending towards me. It was obviously not an excited fan. I jumped around Kamui's lacquered chain prison. Then I felt Mount Lady's hand extending towards me. I jumped on it. Running up her shoulder, cape flailing around behind me, I started getting bored. Jumping on another nearby building, I said. Well, that was fun. See you guys another time. They tried to stop me, but I was just playing around with them. I flashed away, just as their combined attacks were about to reach me. I think I gave the media a nice show, but the show was only meant for one person. Izuku should have seen the exchange. He left him a few clues in it. I decided to not show up at school, leave the pot stirring a bit. Underscore 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 POV narration underscore 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 underscore. Midoriya was writing down more information about the heroes in his notebook. He had seen the whole scene transpire. Their encounter with the vigilante made him a bit confused. Yellow Flash looked familiar to him. The most concerning thing was one of the attacks he used. It looked eerily similar to his friend Alan. Maybe his friend just liked the vigilante, styling one of his attacks after him. Yeah, that must be it. He, at first, subconsciously chose to ignore the apparent height similarity between the two. He didn't want to imagine his friend doing such dangerous stunts. Going to school, he decided to talk to Alan. He needed to ask him some things. The more he thought about the vigilante, the more he started to compare the Yellow Flash to Alan. There were too many similarities. When Izuku reached school, he was a bit late to his first class. He waited an hour to go check on Alan. Concentrating on what was being taught was hard. On his lunch break, he tried to find Alan. Upon reaching his classroom, all he could see was Alan's empty seat. That made his unease even worse. After bringing out his courage, Izuku decided to ask one of his classmates if he knew anything about Alan. The answer he got was even more concerning. Oh, Alan? He sometimes misses class. The teachers got used to it since he still has the highest grades in our class. Was the answer he got. Meaning he doesn't always go to school. What was he doing with his free time? Chapter 11, Underworld and Discoveries. In my free time I familiarized myself with a few people in the crime world. They were not really criminals themselves, just people that made a buck from them. I traveled to a few cities for them. One thing that made me excited was getting to meet Jiren. He was one of the best brokers in the underworld. He worked for anyone that paid him, so he was a lot more trustworthy than a random nobody. I actually managed to do some business with him. In the beginning, he helped me get in contact with the person that made my cape. Now I just bought burner phones and other gadgets from his sources. To him, it didn't matter much that I was a vigilante. I was just another customer. He was a connection that would prove useful later. I was low-key, pretending to look into All for One's location. I already knew it, of course. But I was trying to catch his attention. I was not afraid of him. It was under the pretense of meeting a legend. Childish, sure, but that was the whole point of it. All for One should be able to find my identity too. Getting him interested in my quirk was necessary for my plan. Now, realizing that I couldn't use my favorite training spot anymore made me somewhat sad. Izuku was about to start cleaning up the place in a while. My friendship with him didn't really pan out. I was getting tired of his stuttering. While I helped him out with bullying, his self-esteem remained just as low. He started looking up to me as he did with Bakugo. It became hard to talk to him, especially when he started mumbling to himself. Don't get me wrong, I didn't hate him at all. I also knew he was going to get more confident when he gets a quirk. I was looking forward to befriending him eventually. Although knowing him, he already considers us friends. Bakugo also didn't talk to me anymore, besides the occasional extra comment. I don't know why, but I think he started seeing me as a rival. I never outwardly expressed any wish to join UA after graduation, but he probably assumed I would because of my seemingly powerful quirk. My life became a lot more boring. Keeping up with schoolwork wasn't even an issue that needed discussion. I managed to talk the principal into getting me an excuse so I don't have to be present at all of my classes. My bargaining chip was winning the school some awards at a few contests. I had started working some part-time jobs, saving up money. Training daily was no longer necessary. There wasn't any more progress. I only did so occasionally to keep in shape. I also did more vigilante work at night. Now with a white coat I was a lot easier to spot, but that was the whole point of it. It just screamed for attention. Getting seen by civilians always resulted in them taking photos of me. I allowed them. They served as a reminder to both the villains and the police that I was still around. In their eyes, I was growing bolder, more careless. Just like that, they danced around my identity. It was only a matter of time before they found out. I had been observing the one they put on the case, a detective called Naomi Satsukachi. I think he appeared in the show, his quirk being akin to a lie detector. Seemed interesting enough. His view on vigilantes was always extremely harsh, from what I can remember. The seeds of doubt I planted in Midoriya's mind were starting to show. He was giving me strange looks all the time now. He was most likely afraid to ask what was on his mind. I wasn't going to give him a push either. Naomasa seems really close to discovering my identity. He realized that I was not an adult at all. The difference in height was what gave it away. The only time someone grows like that was when they have a growth spurt in their younger years. Now all I needed to do was wait and observe. POV narration Naomasa was getting restless, his recent discoveries leaving him somewhat concerned. He was hoping his judgment was wrong, but he knew better, the proof was already in front of him. On his computer screen, one could see the file of a 15-year-old teenager, unnaturally tall, possessing a light manipulation quirk. His name was Alan White, an orphan that came here from America with his parents at a very young age. They were the victims of a car accident. All of the information in front of him started painting a rather tragic picture. The child had awakened his quirk late, at the age of 10, specifically. It was rare, but not unheard of. Everything matched, it started coming together, the image of a troubled child trying to help. It was scary to think that an 11-year-old child was hunting down criminals. He had hoped their society at least somewhat protected orphans. Even with his harsh view on vigilantes, he couldn't bring himself to hate this child. But he had a job to do. As soon as he calmed down, he started writing his report. But now, in his eyes, he was no longer writing a report about a vigilante. He wasn't writing about the notorious Yellow Flash, he was writing about the troubled young teen known as Alan. Chapter 12, Guilt and Determination. Naomasa took his report to the police chief as quickly as he could. When he entered the office, he started. Sir, I managed to figure out the identity of the vigilante Yellow Flash. Kenji looked taken aback. He was not expecting such urgency in the detective's voice. Sure, the case had taken a long time, but he was not really in any hurry now. You need to take a look at this. With that, the detective put a file on his desk. Wasting no time, he looked over it. He immediately realized why the detective seemed so on edge. As he read more into the report, about the vigilante's backstory, he thought back to his first appearance. He was apparently around 11 at the time. He had always incapacitated his victims. He also remembered the first time a hero had seen him, his face only covered with his own ripped-up sleeve, just after he saved a girl about his own age from a burning apartment building. Using his sleeves as rags to stop them from inhaling too much smoke. He started getting the gist of the situation more and more. Him being an orphan led the police chief to reconsider his judgment about the vigilante. He had apparently also graduated from middle school early, in fact, that was done a few days ago. Usually, people that went through what this child did rarely become successful and productive members of society. Some even became villains. This child took a different turn in life, it had somehow brought him there. In backstreets, fighting dangerous individuals with little training. He didn't know much about the child's past, only what was written on paper, but he could assume that he didn't begin training before gaining his quirk. With less than a year of training, he started fighting villains. In a sense, he was relieved that someone with such a powerful quirk wasn't evil. Even at such a young age, he had cleared the streets in his district. Very few villains had the courage to step in it, only the overconfident and the insane. After a while, he even started patrolling the districts around him. He caught any type of criminal, from drug dealers to murderers. Due to him, half of Mutasafu almost became a crime-free zone. In a sense, the word on his cape made sense. Looking at his achievements, he deserved to wear it. This was quite difficult for him to wrap his head around it. But, regardless of the age of the vigilante, he needed to stop him from further endangering himself and others that followed his ways. Without waiting, he started calling agencies around the city, even those in nearby cities. Taking down Alan was not going to be an easy task. From the recollection of most heroes that met him, he was extremely fast, both in body and instinct. That was what he was known for. The wider public also knew this. His nickname itself surfaced due to the way he defeated villains. Even the people he saved didn't see more than a golden flash. He was quick, precise, and dangerous in a fight. Their mission was to capture him. It would be a task that required a lot of people and resources. He also needed to contact the only person he hoped could match the vigilante in speed. All Might. The symbol of peace, this was their only real hope in actually catching Alan. He gave that job to Naomasa, knowing the two had some sort of connection. Maybe the detective had more chances of convincing the NR.1 hero. Although he doubted All Might would turn down this request, it didn't matter where it came from. POV Toshinori Yagi _______________________________________________________ Sitting down at home, I looked through some materials I needed to learn to become a good teacher. I had a lot to read, so I decided to start early. My phone rang while I was concentrated on the proper method to approach failure. Apparently, making the student feel bad was alright as long as it was not too excessive. I looked at the caller and immediately responded. Naomasa didn't call that often, and it was usually on very important matters. When I responded and asked what was going on, I got this answer. We have found the identity of the vigilante Yellow Flash. We need your help in apprehending him. I was not expecting that. I had known of this person before. Even though I had just moved here, I was still aware of his influence. I had seen his first appearance in the videos. I could barely follow it with my eyes. Very well, I'll help you. If they reached out to me, then they must be desperate. There may have been ways to circumvent his speed if his quirk a simple speed amplification one. But from the looks of it, it had a lot to do with light. We'll send you his file. Tomorrow we will gather a group of heroes that will help with his capture. Naomasa paused a bit, thinking. This was unusual. He was usually very straightforward. Toshinori, keep in mind, this is a very special case. With that, he ended the call. I quickly turned on my laptop to look at his email. I no longer felt like studying. The second I opened the file I was sent, I realized why Naomasa had said those words to him. He finally understood why his friend seemed somewhat distracted on the phone. The report he sent me sent a shiver down my spine. The vigilante that had taken down the most dangerous villains in Mutasafu was a child. I knew that I couldn't have done anything about it. I knew the guilt I was feeling was illogical. But I had taken on a title. I was the symbol of peace. Clutching what remained of my stomach, the same word repeated in my mind, pathetic. A child had been doing my job. Someone I had sworn to protect was putting his life at risk because of my ineptitude. His blue eyes shone with great determination. He failed to save this person when it was necessary. The least he could do was make sure he could capture him unharmed. Tomorrow would be a busy day, but he didn't think he could fall asleep quickly. He stayed up late, looking more into the feats of the child named Alan. Chapter 13, Fated Meeting. The only thing on the mind of Toshinori Yagi was helping that child. He could barely concentrate on training his successor. Thankfully, all he needed to do was observe. Even when Izuku got stuck under mounds of garbage, it still took him a while to realize. Later today, he needed to head to the police, meeting with the hero group that was being tasked with catching Alan. He decided to start concentrating on his task at hand. For now, even if he kept thinking about it, there was nothing he could change. Just as he was about to finish the training for the day, he could see a tall figure jogging along the beach path. Blinking a bit, he realized it was Alan, but if he acted now, he might not be able to catch the jogging vigilante at all. It took him a bit to calm down, but he decided to sit still, but something happened which made that a lot harder. He stops and sees Midoriya training. Looking on, he says, "Hey Izuku, I see you decided to train. Why are you just dragging stuff though?" Midoriya looked startled as he stumbled and fell. A truck tire pinned him to the ground for the second time today. Not for long this time, as Alan kicked it off quickly. "I decided to start training last week. I'm preparing for the UA exam." Midoriya answered after calming himself. "Oh, I thought you gave up on that," said Alan looking surprised. They proceeded to make small talk about a few things. As Toshinori observed their exchange, he started to realize that his successor was friends with the vigilante he needed to catch in the next few days. He started sweating a bit. He didn't think he would still be anxious about things this late in his life. Then Alan looked at him and said, "Oh, you must be Izuku's personal trainer, right? Thanks for helping him out here." Most people that heard he wanted to become a hero kinda gave up on him. Toshinori, as he heard the relaxed and polite young teen speak to him, he almost looked nervous. He barely muttered a thank you. Guilt was already on his mind yesterday. Now when he also saw just how well-behaved the vigilante was in his free time, he started feeling it again, for different reasons. He was going to capture the polite young man in front of him, even though he saved a lot of people. At this point, he had caught enough criminals to be counted in the top 10 pro-hero list. He had seen that in an article. It put all of his solved cases since his appearance, and compared it to some pro-heroes that also appeared near that time. He didn't care for the validity of the information, just the fact that it was speculated was enough to give Toshinori some stuff to think about. He couldn't bear looking him in the eyes at this point. Thankfully, his next phrase saved him from further discomfort. "Anyway, I have to go." Alan paused a bit. "Midoriya, I hope to see you at the UA exam," he said excitedly. Scratch that his sentence made it a lot worse. Underscore 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 POV Alan underscore 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 underscore. As I was getting my rocks off picking on All Might, I could tell I was just making his discomfort worse word by word. I obviously took this path on purpose. I wanted to play around a bit, and maybe test All Might's reaction. I couldn't help but wonder why he was so shocked. I already speculated that he would take part of the team sent to catch me. It only made sense. He was probably the only person that could keep up with me. At least on paper. And by All Might's constipated reaction, he probably already got the invitation. Meaning they already were forming the team to capture me. There was also something else I found amusing. Talking to Midoriya in front of him was obviously deliberate. This was the first time we had talked in weeks. But All Might probably already considers us friends. Right on the money. Knowing his character, he probably feels really guilty. Regardless, I need to put my game face on for tomorrow. I had a very long day ahead of me. They most likely were going to show up when I wasn't in costume. Meaning I wouldn't look all that stylish for the cameras. Such a shame. There wasn't much I could do. If I were in costume all day, they would realize that I knew about the attack. Right now I headed home to rest. Going to sleep as soon as I hit the pillow with my face. It was a skill I developed in my extensive training. I call it the Snorlax positon. Waking up the next day was refreshing. At least it would have been if I was a morning person. But after staying in bed for an hour, I finally decided to get up. They weren't going to attack me in the morning. I wasn't worried about that. Since I already graduated from Aldera, I didn't really have much to do. I want to join UA at the same time as Izuku and the rest of the Class 1A. Being captured was just one of many ways to go about it. They already don't consider me a criminal due to my age. Getting them to release me would just take a bit of talking. All Might clearly heard my desire to join UA. He would definitely bring it up later. It would be a lot more believable if he does it himself after all. The only sad thing was that I needed to wait till evening for the showdown. I still need to fight a bit. Simply giving up would make me lose all of my connections in the underworld. I still needed those. The informants were still very useful to me. And hey, at least I get to fight All Might. Now I just ate cereal and waited. Chapter 14, Gathering of Heroes, January 2nd. This whole day was filled with anticipation. I could barely hold my cool while waiting patiently. But I knew they weren't going to come to my home. Which is an orphanage filled with children, at least not without evacuating everybody nearby. They probably prepared a team specifically for evacuation. I decided to give them an opportunity. They didn't know I was aware of their attack, but if they knew that I was actively helping their operation, then they might not really consider me all that innocent anymore. They would most likely realize I had some ulterior motive. Regardless, I couldn't wait to see what they were going to throw at me. Curiosity was really eating away at me. The streets were much quieter lately, even the back streets were lacking in activity, both villains and civilians avoided them like the plague. It was the place I acted the most in. Most people. Running to a nearby park only took a few minutes. Really, I always gravitate towards parks for some reason. Not that I mind, a park is a nice place. It also made it easy for the heroes and police to evacuate the people in the area. In the evening, the park was not really that populated. At least not the one I chose as the stage for our little showdown. The park was almost empty already. The further I walked, the fewer people I saw. I could feel the police slowly evacuating them. They were trying to do so quietly. They surrounded the park with squad cars. It was an attempt to cut off my escape routes. I could feel a group of people enter the park. There was about 4 of them. Heroes, All Might was not among them. He was most likely waiting to make an appearance. The heroes I could feel were somewhat recognizable. The ever-tired dry-eyed hero Eraserhead, also future homeroom teacher of Class 1A, the promiscuous hero with a questionable side job as a teacher Midnight, the fashionable best jeanist, not much to say about the guy, and the pro-hero that resembled a cowboy with aim-hack snipe. All 4 played some role in the story. They were respectable people, some with questionable tastes in fashion, looking at Midnight mainly, but these were just the frontliners. I could feel a lot of heroes in the back, among the police force. They were helping keep up the barricade, making sure I wasn't going to escape. Some of the choices for frontliners were to be expected. All of them were wearing special gas masks. Aizawa was among the few people I considered a threat. Midnight would also prove troublesome. Her quirk somnambulist was interesting. They were probably planning to use her aroma on a larger scale. Snipe was also probably going to provide cover fire. Best Jeanist was among the top 5 heroes out there. He could restrain me for a bit. I needed to pay attention to their formation. From where I stood, I counted quite a few heroes. I was not really bothered by their numbers. If I actually wanted to escape, there was nothing here to stop me. They were approaching slowly. I had already stopped and sat down on a nearby bench, waiting for them to make the first move. I think they will first try to speak to me. Looking forward to that. By the time they reached me, I was almost falling asleep, not from Midnight's quirk, but boredom. They really took their time. I must have sat on that bench for at least 10 minutes. Now they surrounded me. I was still relaxing on the bench. Just as Aizawa was about to speak up, I said, "Such a fine day, right, sir? What would you kind heroes want from me?" I said cheerfully and full of energy. He looked a bit taken aback by my random comment. After composing himself, he said seriously, "We already know of your identity as the Yellow Flash. Would you come with us to the station?" Midnight said. She was being quite hopeful. Too bad I needed to put up a fight. This will be my last as a vigilante. Now, why would I do that? My reply was slow and somewhat lazy sounding, losing its cheerful undertone from my previous sentence. It seemed to somewhat annoy them. Dylan's must be really slacking today. If all of you had enough time to come here. I feel honored, really. I was still speaking slowly, not really letting my anticipation show. Right now, I could feel All Might rushing towards us. I thought he would join later into the fight, but this worked too. He probably got impatient, wanting to convince me peacefully. He stopped right in front of me and looked strangely solemn. Just as he appeared, I started hearing several news helicopters. For some reason, I think Aizawa was looking at him like he was looking at an idiot. Objectively, he wasn't wrong. It seemed my little show was going to attract quite a big audience. I can only hope it would attract the intended audience. With both the symbol of peace here and the most famous vigilante in the city, every major news channel wanted a scoop of the situation. As I stood up, All Might started talking. "Please let us help you, Alan." His voice was always loud in this form, honestly. Smiling, I said, "Why, but I'm doing just fine, kind sir." My tone was just as lazy as before, but this time it had a wary undertone. I was prepared for action. All Might looked somewhat sad. Midnight was the first to act, ripping a bit of her costume off and trying to spread her aroma around us, since all of the heroes, including the newly arrived All Might, wore protective gear against her quirk. The best counter I had to her was knocking her out early in the fight. Meanwhile, just as Aizawa was about to activate his quirk, I flashed right in front of him and used Amaterasu. Even with his goggles on, this still took him out of the fight. Truthfully speaking, he was the only threat in this group. As long as he couldn't use his quirk, then I couldn't be damaged, at least not accidentally. After making sure he was out, I quickly dashed towards Midnight. Just as I was about to hit her, my trajectory was intersected by All Might and a bullet. Although Snipe couldn't keep up with me, he could still predict my movements. All Might was clearly not expecting such a quick response. It took him a second to compose himself and intercept me. He was just as fast as I thought. He could keep up with me as long as I didn't go at full speed. I saw him trying to tackle me. He probably didn't want to actually hurt me. I found that quite disrespectful. Did he think I could be subdued so easily? Using my full speed, I appeared behind Midnight and knocked her out. Without her, I could breathe freely. Suddenly my own clothes started fighting against me. I didn't want to fight naked, so I simply resisted it. The clothes only held me in place for a second. Snipe and All Might took this opportunity. The first shot about 3 bullets in quick succession, while the latter tried to take me down from my blind spot. Just as they were about to hit me, I flashed away and kicked Best Jeanist unconscious. With him gone, there was nobody to hold me in place for extended periods. The remaining heroes were getting restless, and the public was probably the same. I had just defeated the number 4 hero while having the number 1 hero right on my back. Looking at the symbol of peace, I quickly flashed a light in his eyes, stunning him momentarily. Using that gap, I got rid of the last hero, besides him. Although Snipe tried to stop me with a few well-placed shots, he didn't manage to even graze me. He was mainly relying on instinct. Needless to say, his reaction speed was very high. Sadly, it didn't save him from being knocked down. Looking back at the symbol, this had turned around, from a group fight into a 1v1. The team they had chosen was made to suppress me. They wanted to capture me quickly. It was a decent combination. Eraser does his thing, Jeanist holds me in place, Midnight puts me to sleep, Snipe was only here for support. If I didn't react quickly, the fight would have been over, just like that. Taking down the enemies in order of importance was the only way to go in my situation. Thankfully, they underestimated my reaction speed quite a bit. Chapter 15, Gathering of Heroes, February 2nd. Now I stood in front of a shocked symbol of peace. I had just defeated 4 pro heroes in less than 15 seconds. It was obvious that I could defend myself by now. Looking into his eyes, I could see that he was still thinking of ways to end this without hurting me. You know, if you don't fight seriously, you won't really be able to capture me, I spoke slowly, in a clear tone this time. This sentence must have sealed the deal. It brought him back to reality a bit. I may be a young teen, but I still possessed a powerful quirk and had quite a bit of combat experience. If he didn't take me seriously, I would just escape. He already witnessed my speed in person. He realized the police blockade wouldn't hold me back for even a second. His expression looked grave, somewhat forced. I can take a few hits, don't worry about that, All Might. My tone took a cheerful turn. He started looking determined again. Very well, young man, I will fight you seriously. Using his greatest speed, he rushed at me. Being somewhat elevated from his jump, he prepared to punch me in a downward motion. I managed to jump over his attempt, kicking him in the arm and sending him flying through some trees. With the speed advantage I had, I could easily outrun the hero, but I wanted to see in person just how strong the symbol of peace was. He recovered quickly. In this fight, he definitely had more strength and stamina. He was a straightforward fighter. He rushed me again. This time in a different manner, he was punching repeatedly, trying to stop me in my tracks. I decided to give him a chance. Conjuring up a shield of light, I tried to block his barrage of powerful strikes. The shield worked in the same way Alma no Murakumo did, by solidifying light. The shield managed to take about 3 punches in total. It sent me flying backwards. The wind pressure from his fists managed to break most of the surrounding trees. The unconscious heroes were pushed away. The scene was quite magnificent. As much as I didn't like the sound of snapping trees, I could appreciate the amount of power behind his fists. I was getting excited. While I was not injured, I certainly looked like I took some damage. Taking his strikes head-on might not be the most healthy solution, but I needed to show some of my strength. I quickly crossed my arms in front of me, using Yasukani no Magatama, towards the hero. I wasn't trying to pierce him with the assault. I made all the lights that were about to hit him explode, purposefully avoiding his old injury and any other lethal spot. The concentrated explosion sent him flying backwards. He was almost flying over the entire park. Using Yada no Kagami, I reflected it from the few remaining trees to reach him midair. He reacted quickly when I had fully appeared in his path. His punch was already near my head. I let him hit me, his punch not holding much power. Due to its lacking momentum, it was still enough to push me down, the momentum that I gained to rotate in the air and drive a heel upwards into his face. I purposefully let him touch me. I didn't want to make this fight look too one-sided. His punch left me dazed and hurtling towards the ground, while All Might got elevated even further. He was eye level with the news helicopters. He recovered quickly. As I hit the ground, he was already about to land with a superhero landing nearby. I was already up when he landed. The fall didn't injure me in the slightest. I quickly kicked a beam of light in his direction. He managed to duck. The beam went right over his head and exploded, blowing the hero in my direction. I quickly rushed at him. He also didn't waste any time, using the momentum he gained from the explosion to greet me with a punch. I decided to block it again, an action which sent me flying right over the park. Landing right near a group of policemen and heroes, I quickly flew back into the fray, not wanting to be done in just yet. We exchanged a lot of blows. By now my bones were starting to ache. All Might also had some blood on his lips. As me and All Might continued fighting with great fervor, Eraserhead managed to recover his vision briefly. He was positioned behind me, still on the ground. I continued fighting All Might, exchanging blows, blocking and dodging occasionally. I pretended not to notice Aizawa. The fight needed to end sooner or later. Otherwise, we ran the risk of All Might reaching his limit. Eraserhead waited for an opportunity to deactivate my quirk, signaling All Might. Apparently, he had gotten the message, stopping his attack, letting Aizawa erase my quirk momentarily, using that opening to tackle me. There was a lot of tension in the air. Our fight already went on for a bit. Both me and All Might were getting somewhat tired. Repeated use of my quirk left me winded. That coupled with me blocking some of his attacks left me nearly exhausted. While my physical strength was decent, it was nothing compared to that of the symbol of peace. I could sense that Midnight was awake too. I didn't bother holding my breath anymore. The fight was already over. This way of exiting the vigilante scene was really flashy. With the commotion I stirred up, the League of Villains was bound to have noticed. Sure, they didn't name themselves that yet. I really only cared about All for One. The quirk, not the person. I needed to make sure it didn't get transferred over to Shigaraki. As long as All for One got interested in my quirk, the opportunity to take him down will eventually appear. With him gone, Kyudai Garaki would be next. Shigaraki wasn't that big of a threat compared to the latter two. He only became one after gaining All for One. Now I needed to go through a few interrogations, but that would come later. Now I just relaxed, taking in the midnight's aroma. I left myself drift to sleep.
That is all for today. Thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed this journey, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. If you have any suggestions or feedback for me, please drop a comment down below.